Happy Easter, church. Hey, it's good to see you. It's good to see everyone here. I'm glad you're here. Hey, if you're a guest this morning, we're so excited that you chose to celebrate Easter with us. As a church, it's our vision to connect people to Jesus and love our community. As we get started, what I want you to do is I want you to look to a person on one of your sides, look at them and say, "You look good today." All right, now look at the person on the other side and say, "You look good today." All right, now if one of those people was not your spouse, introduce yourself so it's not weird the rest of the service. Hey, so we've been talking about what it means to make a trade. We've been wrestling and learning different moments in the Bible when God's people, they make a trade. And some of them have been life-giving trades. Some of them, a future has been born out of this exchange. For some of them, though, for some of them, they made a trade and it ruined them. Some people, they traded something away or they gained something and they found nothing but problems from it. Some people, it saved their family. We've been looking at all of these different types of trades. And all of those lead up to today because the greatest, most ultimate trade that we have is the trade that we're here to celebrate now. It's Jesus' trade when he traded death for life. I mean, that's why you're here this morning. That's why we celebrate and worship. It's because Jesus made this trade where he traded his life for ours. He traded his life on a cross and in a tomb so we can have life. And while it's real easy every Easter for us to celebrate that trade, I think that a lot of times it's a little bit more difficult to live that trade every day, isn't it? It's easy to, get up. It's Easter morning. We, get dressed. We come to church. We celebrate Easter. We know what Jesus did, or, we hear about it, or someone invited us, so we come and listen. And, it's easy to do on Easter. But to live in celebration of this trade that Jesus made in the middle of October, or the middle of February, or the middle of July, it's a little bit more difficult. This ultimate trade that is supposed to bring us life oftentimes is forgotten about in the middle of the busyness of everyday life. But what would it look like? What would it look like if we lived within Jesus' trade of death to life every day? I want to pray and we're going to jump in. Jesus, I'm thankful for today. I'm thankful that you walked out of a tomb so we can walk out of ours. Jesus, you died and you came back to life in order to give us life. And I pray this morning that we not miss that. Jesus, whatever it is that we drug into the room with us, I pray that we will set it down and we will pay attention to what it is that you want to teach and what it is that you want to say. Jesus, I'm thankful this morning that because of what you did on a cross and a tomb, we can meet here this morning as a room full of sinners. We've made plenty of mistakes. But because of that trade, we can live with the hope of it. Jesus, help us capture that this morning. It's in your name we pray. Amen. I could go big, or I could go home. I could go big and I could win a lot, or I could go home. That was the choice that I found myself making. Back when I was in college, it was, second or third year in college, we were home for winter break, and my friends and I, we thought that we really didn't have anything to do. And so not necessarily a decision I'm proud of. It's not one I'm supporting today, but decision I made nonetheless that we're all going to learn from a little bit, hopefully, is that we decided that the best thing that a group of broke college kids can do is go to a casino. We were up in Buffalo, and when you live so close to Canada, Canada doesn't really seem like another country. It just seems like a trip across the bridge. And in Canada, you don't have to be as old to participate in nightlife. And so we piled in the car, and we drove over. and we walked into the lobby at the Falls View Casino. And I've never felt more out of place in all my life. But we walked in like we knew exactly what we were doing. And we walked in and we kind of looked around and assessed the situation. And like the high rollers that we were, we walked over and we sat down at the nickel slots. All right. I had brought an amount of cash in with me, and I made kind of the rule for myself, whenever this is done, I'm done, and then I can't even afford gas on the way home, but it's going to be fun, you know? And so I sat down and I started playing. I put my nickel in and I pulled the bar, and what I learned is that you can play with one nickel. Like the game will work with one nickel. But your prize is capped. And so if you play with one, you can only win a certain amount. But if you play with three, then what you are able to win goes up exponentially. Well, I decided early on, you know what, I'm just going to play more times. And so that's what I did. And I just put one in, and it was great fun losing nickel after nickel after nickel after nickel. And I quickly realized this really was not a smart choice. This is not fun. Even if it's a nickel at a time, I'm only losing money. But then I had this friend that was with me. His name was Brandon. And I don't know why or how, but somehow Brandon, he stumbled into dumb luck that every time he pulled that handle, he won something. And so he's over there, just winning away. And I'm over here, just feeding the man. Nickel after nickel. Not winning anything. And so we were there a little while, and I get down to the end. I've got 3 nickels left. And I'm faced with a choice. I can either play all 3 at one time as my last shot to win big, or I can play 3 times and kind of control the situation and possibly get more opportunities to win. And so I was faced with a choice. As I sat there and I looked, I thought, is the reward greater than the opportunity to control? As we sit here this morning, we're faced with a similar choice. Do we live life that we can control with mediocre benefits? Or do we live life to the full and live in the full reward of what Jesus offers us? It's a choice that we face almost every day when we wake up, but it's a choice that maybe brings a conclusion on Easter. Do we live life where we're in control with mediocre results, where maybe we can get a little bit out of it? Or do we live life fully alive the way that Jesus has designed us to live? You see, some of Jesus' closest friends, after Jesus is put on a cross and after he is buried, Jesus' friends are terrified. Because the reason they're terrified is because Caesar wanted nothing to do with any other kingdom, any other influence. And so Caesar is ultimately wanting to wipe out every bit of this Christianity type thing. They're terrified because the Jewish leaders who were intimidated from the very beginning, they just watched Jesus be crucified. Surely they're next, right? Surely it's them that's next. They're going to come after his closest friends. They're absolutely positive it's going to happen. You see, the disciples are confused because they literally traded everything, and they thought that they were getting this life to the full in return. They traded their jobs. They traded their families. They traded everything that had been scripted in their life. They let go of it in order to follow Jesus. And now, for more than 3 years, they have followed and they had learned and they have observed his miracles. And now, he's dead. And when they thought they were making a trade for life to the full, now all of a sudden it has come crashing down in front of them. The life that they trusted in is now dead. Their leader has been killed. And at this moment, everything seems lost. And not only does it seem lost, there's mass confusion because now the Jesus that they buried all of a sudden has disappeared from the grave. And there's speculation in town that they were the people that stole his body. And there's speculation, there's rumors, there's everybody saying something different. And now all of a sudden from that morning there is this small voice from a couple people saying he's actually alive. The disciples find themselves in a room. They find themselves in a room to share dinner together. And this is how the beginning of this dinner plays out. In John chapter 20, beginning in verse 19. It says, on the evening of the first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked, for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them. He said, peace be with you. After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. The same Jewish leaders that just killed Jesus, they have to be coming after his best friends. And as these disciples sit in this room around this dinner table, they are absolutely riddled with fear. There can be no other kingdom other than the one established by the government. And so now this is driving a fear. Fear has stolen their life. And here's what I know this morning. As we celebrate Jesus, I know that there are some of us that we are in this room right now. There are some of us here this morning that we are living life in this room gripped by fear. We're in fear of what's to come. We're living in fear of unmet expectations. We're living in fear of disappointing others. We live locked in this room of fear in comparison of others and what others might think. We live in this room of fear of being lonely. You see, there's some of us here this morning that as these disciples, they find themselves in this room gripped with fear. We can relate to that. Because even though we might be here this morning, we might have a smile on our face and, maybe we're saying, there's some aspects of life that are good. If we look deep down inside of us this morning, there are some of us that we understand this life of fear. We understand how it taints the water of life. Joy seems lost. The disciples, their purpose has disappeared. And they're just barely existing. And I'm pretty confident that there are some of us here this morning that we feel the same way. For whatever reason, joy has been lost. Joy has been lost. We're not sure what our purpose is anymore. And even though, we're smiling and everything's good, we don't know what our next step is. We're existing, but we're existing pretty much with mediocre benefits in life. While the disciples sit in this room, the crafty whispers of fear kept the kingdom in silence and the disciples still until hope enters the room. Until hope enters the room in this surprising turn of events, this maybe quiet whisper of a couple people that say Jesus is alive, and now all of a sudden Jesus is standing in the locked room with them. If you thought fear was at its highest level before, how about when the guy that you just buried a couple days ago is standing in a room talking to you? There's not one of us in the room that in our right mind would say, yeah, I'd love it. Right? We're terrified, which is exactly where they're at, which is why they immediately ask for evidence. And Jesus, he looks at his disciples, his best friends, and he knows the fear that's in the room, and he looks at them and he says, peace be with you. Peace be with you. A normal traditional Middle Eastern greeting that Jesus takes to a whole new level. As he stands in this room, alive, no longer in the tomb, and looks at his best friends, and he says, peace. Peace to your fear. Peace to your struggle. Peace to your search for purpose. Peace be with you. And it's at this moment that the fear that was in the room is flipped upside down. Jesus recharters the room and he says, peace be with you. Come and look at my hands and my feet. Physical, tangible evidence that you can touch. Come and look at this side where I was jabbed with a spear. Come. In Luke's writing of the gospel, he asks for something to eat. And he sits down and he eats a piece of fish. All of a sudden, the fear of the disciples is flipped over. Fear is gone because hope has entered the room. You see, friends, Jesus is not this mediocre benefit king. He is a fully alive king who brings hope to our world. At this moment where the disciples are at, and for so many of us, death is lived. We live death all day long. And death is always lived until hope is found. Death is lived until hope is found. We will continue to live life with mediocre results, even if by the world standards we're gaining everything. Deep down inside, we know that we are lacking purpose. We know that we are lacking hope, and joy is dwindling. Death is lived until hope is found. Question this morning. If Jesus is alive, why so many times are we living dead? If Jesus is alive, then why are we living dead? If Jesus is alive, then why are we operating every single day based off of what we know and what we control? If Jesus is alive, then why is it that we're harboring grudges and anger and living dead? If Jesus is alive, why is it that we're just trying to gain for ourselves, no matter who it is that we step on to get there? If Jesus is alive, why are we living dead? If Jesus did not walk out of the tomb just so we can live comfortably. He walked out of a tomb so we can live life, fully alive life. Death and fear have been defeated, and he is wanting to step into our lives to break through the wall of our room and bring hope. Hope that does not disappear. Hope that is not built on the credentials of the world. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 says, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. But one translation says, with my victorious hands. This is the God that steps into our room. This is the Jesus that steps into our room of fear and says, peace. Peace to your fears. Peace to your struggles. If a cross could not hold me, then I bring hope today that there's nothing in this world that will defeat you. Death is lived until hope is found. This morning for you, what is it in this life that's so enticing about the room? Jesus gives us this opportunity of grace and forgiveness, this second chance at life where he invites us in, where he says, I took your sin and I took your mistakes and I took your guilt and I hung him on a cross and I buried him in a tomb and I walked out in order to bring you fully alive life. What is so enticing about the room? The room where we live death, the room where we stand in fear, the room where we harbor grudges, the room where we sit comfortably, the room where we live in fear. Death is lived until hope is found. Where is it this morning that Jesus needs to step into your room? Where is it in your life this morning that he needs to bring hope? You notice the disciples' reaction when they realize who's there? When they realize who's there, it says that the disciples are overjoyed. The disciples are exploding with joy when they realize that Jesus, who is fully alive, who is fully God and fully man, is standing there with them and bringing hope to their world that not even death could throw things off course. Death is lived until hope is found, and it's in this moment where the disciples find hope in a brand new way. This morning, where is hope needed to be found in your life? For some of us, it's this revenge that we're seeking. It's this anger. Someone disappointed us. Someone did something wrong to our family. And we're just angry all the time, and our friends know it, and our family knows it because we're short and we're bitter, and joy seems to have gone down the drain a long time ago. Maybe someplace along the way, the church didn't live up to the expectations that you had for it. And instead of being a part of it and solving it, we just got angry with it. We're angry when someone disappointed and let us down. We're angry when life did not work out the way that we had scripted it. And it's easier to be angry than to find hope. We live death until we find hope. Maybe this morning in our lives, the place where Jesus needs to walk into our room is to bring hope to our bitterness and our anger. Maybe for some of us, the weight of life right now is overwhelming. Their disappointment doesn't seem to describe it. We never feel like we're measuring up. It never feels like we're doing what we're supposed to. Our marriage seems like it's struggling. Our relationship with our kids seems like it's struggling. Whatever it might be, the weight of life is heavy. And maybe this morning where hope needs to breathe life into you is just to hear and be reminded of the peace that Jesus brings to our room. Maybe for some of us, we've been a part of church for a long time. Maybe we haven't been involved as much recently or whatever, and we know we need to get back and all that type stuff. And but we've been around church quite a bit. And our best attribute in church is keeping our seat warm. We're awesome at it. We will come and we will show up and we will sit like a professional sitter. But if we're asked to be involved or if we're asked to serve someplace, no, I don't have time for that. And while we are here, we're not really engaged. And maybe there's no hope in life because we're not involved in kingdom-changing things. We're just controlling things. But maybe there's some of us this morning that hope has never found its way into our life because we've never accepted what Jesus did for us. We've never owned up to the fact that I've sinned, I've made mistakes, and I need a Savior. We keep coming up with excuses of why we shouldn't, why we don't have time, why we don't like crowds. And so all the while Jesus is saying, peace, I'm bringing peace to your life. I'm breathing hope into you. We've yet to turn our lives over to Jesus and say, your plan's better. Your world is better. It's not about me. But where is it in our room where we need Jesus to bring hope? Death will continue to be lived until hope is found. So I sat there in front of this slot machine, and I had a choice to make. I could play all 3 of my nickels and maximize the reward. Or I could just play them one at a time and maybe gain more chances to win. One of them, I would be completely in control of each and every nickel. One of them, it would just be up to what was going on. And so I was faced with a choice. When you came in this morning, you were handed a nickel. I want everybody to get that out. Grab that. This is the first time we've paid people to come to church, so tell your friends, I sat there with these 3 nickels in my hand, and I was reaching up. I was reaching up to put all 3 of these nickels in this game and maximize my opportunity for reward. And you remember my friend Brandon? Brandon, the one that was winning everything? Brandon leans over to me and he says, "Matt, what are you doing?" And I said, it's my last 3. I'm just trying to, win big. And he says, "You can't do that." He said, you got to play them just one at a time because you'll get more chances to win. And so I pulled the 3 down and I put 1 in and I pulled the handle and I looked on the screen in front of me, and what came up on the screen was a winning combination. And I felt good for about 0.2 seconds. And then I realized if I would have put all 3 in, this is how much I would have won. To which Brandon was standing behind me, and I slowly rotated my body and looked at him. And he quickly walked away, which was wise. You see, I missed out in that moment. I missed out on this opportunity for this much bigger reward because I wanted to be in control and because I was listening to the people around me instead of, what would have gained me the biggest results. I missed out on a reward because I wanted to be in control. I missed out on a reward because I wanted it to be the one that scripted the story. And there's some of us this morning that Jesus is inviting us to this life of hope, where death does not rule, but hope does. And he's asking us, I need you to go all in. I need you to let go of everything you've got. All 3 nickels. I need you to play big and I need you to win big because I died for you. Well, we have to make a trade. There's some of us this morning that Jesus is inviting us into life with him. A life of hope that no matter what happens, that even if death comes, there is still hope. But we have to make a trade. We have to trade control. We have to trade us writing the story. We have to trade us being in charge. But I guarantee, friends, the life that Jesus invites us to will always be better than what we can script for ourselves. Even when it seems like we're on top of this world, deep inside of us, there's something that's still empty if Jesus is not there. And death will continue to be lived. Here in just a minute, I want to invite you to make a trade. I want to invite you to play your nickel someplace around the room. And maybe already you're freaking out. Don't freak out. There's some of us in the room this morning that as we celebrate Jesus bringing life, fully alive life, we recognize I've never surrendered my life to Jesus. I've never been baptized. I've never buried my old self. And this morning, I want to invite you, if that's you, to not listen to the excuses and your friend that's in your corner telling you just play 1 at a time. If that's you, I want to challenge you to come make that trade this morning. We've got what you need to make it possible. Water, a crowd, and we'll give you a t-shirt. Maybe, though, you've made that choice, but you resonated with some of the other areas that I talked about earlier. Maybe for some of us, we're harboring a grudge. We're angry at life. I want to invite you to trade. Come make a trade and write a note of forgiveness. Maybe life is heavy right now. Maybe life is heavy. I want to invite you to come and make a trade. Trade that weight that you feel like you're carrying on your own, and make a trade and just allow one of our elders to just pray over you. Pray the peace of Jesus over you. Maybe you recognize I'm pretty good at warming a seat. And maybe this morning you make a trade and you find a place to serve. There's nothing that's as enticing about the room that will ever get us further than Jesus. Death will continue to be lived until hope is found. This morning, where is hope needed in your life? Where is it that you need to make a trade in order to live life fully alive as Jesus calls us to? Peace. Peace I bring you. This morning as we make trades, let it be peace and hope that Jesus brings to our life as death disappears from it. Why don't we go ahead and stand together? We're going to worship a little bit more. It should be what the church does best together. We're going to worship, and over the next couple songs, I want to invite you to make a trade. Maybe you resonated with life being heavy. All around the room, you see up on the wall, up high, so we can all see it. There are labels. There's prayer and forgiveness, serving and baptism. I want to invite you to make a trade this morning. Maybe life is heavy and you need someone to pray over you. As we worship, whenever you feel comfortable, just head back to that corner, and there are some of our leaders back there that they just want to pray for you. And there's a bucket for you to drop your nickel in and make that trade to find fully alive life. Maybe you're harboring that grudge. Maybe your anger and bitterness is defining life. In the back, there's a table for you to write a note under the forgiveness. Make a trade to find fully alive life where Jesus brings hope. Maybe you recognize you need to serve. You need to be a part of the life of the church, to use the talents that God gave you for His kingdom. Back in the back, there's a serving area where you can stop and you can write your name and fill it out of where you want to serve, so we can get you plugged in there. But the biggest trade that we can make is to trade our life for life in Jesus. And there are some of us, I know this morning, that we've been putting this off and we've been coming up with excuses. And even right now, you're like, oh, I got my Easter clothes on and did my hair, But this morning as we worship, if that's you, I want to invite you to be courageous. Courageous to find not death, but life. Courageous to not allow life to be defined by the world and the control of the world, but to find life, fully alive life in Jesus. To surrender your life in baptism. To be raised to a new life where all of the old and all of the guilt and all of the shame and all of the fear of the room is buried as Jesus walks out of it with you. I'm going to be down front in this corner. And if that's you, I just want you to come down and meet me. I'd love to pray for you. And in a few minutes, we're gonna celebrate those choices together. Death is lived, friends, until hope is found. As Jesus walks out of a tomb to give us life, where is it this morning where hope needs to be found in your life? Where is it where we need to trade our life for His life?